Now, 1 week later, it is April 3rd of 1836. You've got classes going on in the building. They're on the 3rd floor. You've got some of those curtains have been drawn down on the main floor. And remember those kind of pulpit altar system we saw in the picture of the temple? You get Joseph and Oliver, his scribe at one point, but obviously now back from his mission, from the missionary experience to the Lamanites. They decide that they'll drop a curtain, and they wanted to go to that altar to thank the Lord that they have seen his glory, that the Shekinah, the Shineha, is now back. As they now pray in a sense of gratitude, who do they see? Okay, good. Elijah's coming. First they see Christ. And notice they described him. And he now indicates that he has accepted this place as his abode. So notice what we call temples. The Kirtland Temple is the house of what? The house of the Lord. And nowhere do I think we see it better in Hawaii. You know, this grand entrance. And then you look and you go, oh, who could ever live in a place like that? And you'd say, oh, well, it's not my house, it's not your house, it is the house of the Lord. So Christ now indicates that, yes, he accepts it, and suddenly you get messengers now coming. Who's the first that comes after Christ? Oh, wait, where can I find this? Section 110 in the Doctrine and Covenants. So 110. If you were to say, who's the first to come, it will be Moses. And notice, Moses had the glory. A cloud by day, a pillar by light, and here comes Moses. And he's now going to bring priesthood keys. And I don't think it's any coincidence that Joseph is, who's he descended from? His father's Joseph, but going right back. Joseph, okay, how about John Lathrop? Someone we talked about, and you'd say Oliver Cowdery, John Lathrop, and here comes Moses, and he brings the keys of gathering. And you'd say, wait a minute, Moses, you're late. You're 6 years late. We've already started gathering. We've gathered everybody from New York to Kirtland, but what does it mean he brings the keys of gathering? Okay, you can gather all the tribes of Israel. In other words, Moses had gathered them, crossed over the Red Sea, eventually taking them to a promised land. And guess what, Joseph and Oliver? You now gather, living in the dead, all the tribes of Israel. Next coming will be Elias, which Elias is a title that means forerunner. He brings the keys of the covenants of Abraham. What does that mean? Okay, Elias. A lot of people will say it was Abraham. I've actually heard someone say, no, I think it was Noah. I'm not quite sure we really know, but it's a title. Like some will call John the Baptist and Elias. But Elias, you'd say the covenants of Abraham. So notice what happens. We're talking temple here. And where could these keys be restored? Only in a temple. Here's Moses, gather the living and the dead. Here's Elias. You make possible that they can make the same covenants that Abraham made with God. And now guess what? We're going to bind this whole thing together, because the next one coming is Elijah, whose name means my God is Jehovah. And suddenly we bind together the hearts of what? The fathers to the children to their fathers, lest the whole earth then be smitten with a curse. Well, okay. Tell me, of all the glories we've talked about with Joseph, is this right up there? Okay, so this is, you would say, wow, this is amazing. You've had Section 76 in Ohio, in Hiram. Do you see this? Do you see that? Celestial Kingdom. And suddenly they've got the keys necessary, all the keys necessary for this dispensation. Well, okay. Every time Joseph has something glorious, such as this, such as first vision, such as Section 76, what happens?
Opposition.
Okay, opposition, persecution. Whether it's the minister in Palmyra that takes everything very lightly, amusing, wow, that's funny, and suddenly he's very persecuted. Okay, so this. where do you get opposition? And the opposition now comes from something called a what? Bank. Here goes. So you build the Kirtland Temple. What's one of the next public buildings built by the saints? And it's a bank on Temple Square. Okay, the bank. You'd say the leadership of the church, including Joseph Smith, Sidney Rigdon, Oliver Cowdery, they're very excited about establishing a bank. Because after all, you'd say Kirtland is the gathering place. People are gathering from all over. They're selling their farms, and when they come, they've got their money, but they're putting their money in the Gentiles' hands as they arrive in town. So the kind of no-brainer is, let's establish our own bank, and they can put it in our hands. Well, okay. So they've got this idea, and a little bit faulty from beginning to end. Joseph says he never gets a revelation on the bank. He also, in the Doctrine and Covenants, it is told him by the Lord that he will never have this financial success. But nevertheless, it's like he's pushing the envelope. He sends Oliver Cowdery to the east, and Oliver is to get plates made for the bank. So tell me, would money from this bank look the same as this bank? No, everything's different. So Oliver goes east, and he gets plates to make a $1 bill, a $2 bill, a $5 bill, a 10, a 20, and suddenly gets them, and he gets, the plates all have, it says Kirtland Safety Society Bank Company, okay? All right, so here goes. Oliver goes east, and they spend quite a bit of money, and they get the plates. They've now got a press, and they're going to manufacture this paper money. In the meantime, Orson Hyde is sent to the Ohio legislature to get approval for them to set up a bank. Now, Oliver comes back. He's got the plates. The problem is, Orson Hyde comes back from the legislature, and they have been denied the right to set up a bank. Is it because they are Mormons? No. The answer is, if you're going to set up a bank, your head people need to have enough collateral or money to make that bank good, to be able to back the bank. And the conclusion by the legislature is that Joseph, Sidney, and others who are principal players in this proposed bank, they don't have enough money. Well, all right, a decision is now made. What do? Here's Oliver Cowdery. He's got these beautiful plates for the money. Here's Orson Hyde saying we can't set up a bank, and the decision is made, let's not set up a bank, let's set up an anti-bank. And so they took these plates, and almost with like a fingernail file, they kept Kirtland Safety Society, but then they just etched in anti, meaning we're not a, and they etched in ing, we're not a bank, we are an anti-banking company. And suddenly they're in business. But now notice they operate as a bank. So here come all of those that are gathering to Kirtland. Would you want to put your money in the Gentile bank on the edge of town? Or would you want to kind of like one-stop shopping, go to the temple, attend school, and now I'm right at the bank, and I'm putting my money in the bank? Okay. When you put your money into the bank, tell me, does the bank keep your money? No. In other words, it may say you have $50, but in reality, they've taken your $50 and they've loaned it out for student loans, cars, lands, and they're speculating, but they're going to make money any way they look at it. Well, the same thing was going on with the Kirtland Safety Society Anti-Banking Company. And then disaster hit. In 1837, it started in New York City. There was, they were charging extremely high prices for flour. And I'm not talking flowers in the marketplace, but, pretty stable, a staple food product. And suddenly there is a riot on the streets of New York. And they don't want to pay that price to, okay. I've actually thought that, at our stores here. But nevertheless, okay, so they don't want to pay that price. They don't think it's right, and they have a riot. And pretty soon the riot goes, we're all going to run to our banks and we're going to grab our money out. Well, what happens if we all run to, say, the Bank of Hawaii here? If we ran, would it make a dent? No. Okay. But if we got all of Honolulu to run to the bank and say, give us back our money, what's going to happen to the bank teller? Pretty soon she's going to look at her cash drawer and, wow, I don't have any money and we're not coming out of the vault. Pretty soon they're going to close the doors until they can get the money. Well, the problem is there's a run on the banks in New York and it spreads through the nation. So 26 states, at that time we're in the U.S., and 26 states are now affected. As they ran on the bank in Kirtland, doors are opened first. Finally, they closed the doors. They opened them back up, and the average investor got back 12.5 cents on every dollar they'd put in the bank. Okay, how do they feel about their investment? Okay, would you be angry? Let's say you'd worked at the cultural center. You've been working roads. Well, I worked at a bakery. I just make a donut. I still can't eat them, one after another. I mean, and so you're saving to head on to school. How are you going to feel? And especially when you look at your money and whose signature is printed on every bill. Joseph Smith. Suddenly, the word in the streets in Kirtland, Joseph Smith, fallen prophet. Okay, would we have said that? What's your thought? Look at us. Rise up, youth of Zion. Who's to say what our individual reaction would be? Perhaps you had similar feelings. As you come to campus, maybe you're living with your best friend, and you go home and you go, I can't wait to eat, those Hostess cupcakes. And you get home and suddenly they're gone. And there's your candy bars gone, and your Captain Crunch is gone, and and then all of a sudden, best friend, issues. And okay, so the word on the street, Joseph Smith, fallen prophet. Now, what's the impact going to be? And the impact goes like this. Okay, who were most affected? And I'd say the leadership of the church. So if you were to look at the first presidency, we lost a member of the first presidency. If you were to look at the 3 witnesses to the Book of Mormon, 3 witnesses to the Book of Mormon, this is the time period that everybody's falling apart. And pretty soon they are gone. If you were to look at the original Quorum of the 12, 9 members of the Quorum of the 12 are going to fall. And if you were to look at the first Quorum of the 70, you would see the same impact. Such impact that Joseph then always called this time period tragedy of, what's the new name for Kirtland? Tragedy of Shinehaw. In other words, we have gone from this incredible glory to it's like we've all just fallen in a black hole. Good.
Were all of those who fell over this?
No, they're not over this, but it starts. You know how something kind of, you go, wow, the bishop didn't look at me today. I thought and it starts, and then, it eventually, boom. And so, if you were to say, what will happen to Joseph Smith during this time? Recall at one point I said, Joseph's walking through the streets. He sees Wilford Woodruff, and he says, Wilford, are you friend or foe? And Wilford said, Joseph, I'm still a friend of a prophet of God. And Joseph says, it's so hard to tell these days. In other words, what's going to happen? What will happen is an apostate church will take over the Kirtland temple. So you'd say the temple is gone. For Joseph and for Sidney Rigdon, they will be arrested. They will be thrown in jail in Kirtland. Well, and notice what they are charged with, setting up an illegal bank. And while waiting for their trial, to, in their case, hoping to prove their innocence, a way will be provided for them to escape, and so they run from Kirtland. Okay, tell me, what just happened to the church? Okay, teeter. Everybody's teetering. Everybody has an opinion. It isn't just like, hey, did you like that talk at Sunday? Oh, his talk was better than her talk. Or, you know, I like this Sunday school class. Suddenly, people are starting to say, Joseph Smith's a fallen prophet, and if they're saying he's a fallen prophet, they've taken over the temple, they've got guns, they've got knives, they're going to whip who out of that building? Brigham Young. You know, they're going to whip Brigham out of the building. In other words, this temple is ours, whereas Joseph, oh, he's escaped. He's run to Missouri. Well, okay, we're going to stand, I don't know, 10 minutes break, and we're going to talk about the original quorum of the 12 and what caused them to fall. And invariably, you're going to hear me say, what? Bank. Okay, bank's going to hit it. And what you're going to learn this next hour is that there is no generation gap in sin. Okay, I don't care if it happened in the 19th century. You're going to be able to say, oh my gosh, that's my weakness too. You know, and you'll be able to say, no, I need to make sure that I can always side with the prophet.